I don't know when they introduce you, whether it's a complete introduction. First of all, I'm married to a woman. Also, I think what he missed out is I'm from Bihar. So many people, when they hear that you're from Bihar, their eyebrow raise. Anything can good come from Bihar as well? So I was teaching in the Bible college, and I said, even Jesus came from Nazareth. They said, can anything good come from Nazareth? You know, Bihari people are very intelligent. They are really, really intelligent. Actually, two Biharis were talking to each other, and the one is saying to the other one, you know what? If you will tell what is in my bag, all my eggs are yours. And if you'll tell how many are these, all 6 are yours. And if you will tell whose eggs are this, my murgi is yours. The other one is saying, can you give a hint? God bless Bihar. I was telling in the morning, Kerala is God's own country, Bihar is next to them. You know, there's a God is a God of all. And I say that I am the answer of fervent prayer of saints. I was talking to somebody, and I told them, Bihar is always mentioned as a graveyard of missionary. They said, please don't tell it. No longer Bihar is graveyard of missionary, but it's become vineyard of missionary. God has a plan for every tribe, every tongue, every race, every place. Amen. Can we give a God good clap offering? I come from a non-Christian family. I was born in a Rajput family in Bihar, studied in Banaras Hindu University, grew up to defend my faith, and we used to go during, people from those organizations used to come. They used to come to a hostel, teach us how to defend our faith. We were going. And finally, when I joined Navy at the young age of 22, and suddenly I was all over the place. The thoughts started coming, why I'm alive as a young guy of 23-year-old, good job, able-bodied, good sportsman. I used to play soccer for Navy. And the thoughts started bombarding my mind that what is that you're living for? Is that work, eat, sleep? Work, eat, sleep. Is that all you're going to do? Or is something else to your life? And as I tried to find the answer, the more confused I was. I was a good reader. I tried reading, there was no answer. I remember the 2 books I was reading that particular of time. One was a book on communism, and the another one was a book written by Rajneesh Osho, titled Beyond the Frontiers of Mind. And both this book actually wanted to instigate you that in order to become authentic, you have to do something different. And of course, communism talks that in order to bring order to the society, bring disorder. And violence is the way. Slowly, I was drifting towards insanity. I was not able to sleep. I had just joined submarine. I was under trainees. My schedules were tough. Because I was not sleeping in the night, I was making a lot of mistakes. My relationship with my superiors got spoiled. Every day, I'll make mistake. They'll be angry at me. And then it will be like a vicious cycle. And finally, my friends told me that, there is answer for everything. And the answer lies in 2 pegs. So in the Navy, before you're introduced to your system, you're introduced to your bar. So I was taken, and they offered me. I come from a background where drinking was a taboo. And when I drank, alcohol made things worse. I became more depressed, more suicidal. And you know what? I thought that the only way out is suicide. If I'll die, things will be fine. And at that particular time, somebody came and shared a good news. And that good news was just 1 sentence long. It says, God loves you. And I said, nobody cares for me. If I'll die, probably my parents will mourn for a few months, probably for a year, and they'll be move on. And anyway, in the multitude of Bombay, sorry, it's Mumbai now, I was lonely. And the loneliness was not revealed to anybody. It was killing me inside. And that particular time, this one thing, the quest of God loves you. Who is the God who loves me? Took me to the church. Absolutely, the last place I wanted to find my answers of life. And actually, I found there. So glory be to God that He meets us in a place where we least expect Him. And to the people that are least expected. So God be the glory that if I'm alive here, it is because of your grace, because of the God's grace. Also, I says that today, I wanted to see that what's in the name. I told you I'm from Rajput background. So a lot of people used to ask me, earlier days, in the yesteryears, in our history, the Rajputs were the warrior, they were courageous people, they were really fighters. What happened to the new generation Rajputs? There is no Josh, there is no courage, there is no fighting spirit. And I used to tell them, you know what? In earlier years, when you'll see the Rajput's name, Maharana Pratap Singh, Prithvi Raj Singh, Himmat Singh, Hitler Singh, that kind of Rana Sangram Singh, name itself will bring warrior within you. Nowadays you have Mulayam Singh, Phool Singh, Kamal Singh, Honey Singh. दम किधर से आएगा? Very true. And Bible, actually, I was very, very interested. In fact, it has become my ritual whenever I go to somebody, I ask them, what is your name? And what is the meaning of your name? I have been visiting all these houses. She's smiling, Jessica and Lydia and Jerusha and all these. I said, what's the meaning of your name? And they beautifully tell their name. And so interesting to know that their parents have waited. And she said, when I was conceived, that was, by the way, my story as well. When they were conceived, they said they started thinking about one boy name and one girl name, and then she was. Jerusha was born. And Jerusha was born, her elder sister came running. Jerusha has come, Jerusha has come. But in the Bible, there are some difficult names there. Can you go? What is that? The top one? Oh, you all have gone to your Sunday school. What is the next one? What is that? Okay, the third one is a little more difficult. What is that? Yeah, in a crowd you can escape. My favorite one is from Isaiah 8:1. Just go for it. I'm here for last 4 days and I'm in awe of the language skill of Bangalore. I'm made to feel like I've come from a village. Your English is so impeccable. Really, I've always felt that. Normally, anyway, I speak authorized Bihari version. So many people tried to correct me. They forgot their tense. But I haven't been able to change myself. My daughter sits there whenever I speak, and whenever I'll speak, she'll say, 1. I say, please go away. You're the biggest discouragement in my life. She'll keep on saying, means I have made 2 mistakes. I say, your fingers are too little for counting my mistakes. Anyway, today we are going to look for a character whose name his name also is very tongue twister, a very unknown, mysterious, very obscure kind of character is this. I haven't heard it, probably have read Bible many times, but this character has always escaped my attention. A few months ago, we were doing this expository teaching on book of Samuel, and I was supposed to preach on 2 Samuel chapter 9, and there this character came. And when I started dwelling on this character, actually, it blew my mind. So much of richness in those 13 verses, and this character actually was displaying the heart of God. This character called Mephibosheth is mentioned in book of 2 Samuel chapter 9. Anybody had any idea who is this? Jonathan's son. Oh, you all are brilliant. I know that. Jonathan's son and Saul's grandson. You know David. David, who went to fight with Goliath, he killed him, and he came and he thought, oh, he's going to have a warm reception there. That was not to be. Because the moment his popularity rose, the opposition rose too. And he found a very nice enemy in Saul. And Saul started going after his life. One day I was coming from church and we were talking. And I was talking to my daughter, why Saul got angry? Because this character Goliath was shouting anyway for 40 days. Choose a man for yourself and let us fight 1-on-1. And whoever wins or secures the victory for the whole army. But nobody, absolutely nobody from the army of Israel could take up this challenge. I am from defense background. And I know that if a Pakistani will shout a challenge on the border, it will be shame if no Indian will rise up. But that was the case of Israeli people, God's chosen people, but nobody could take challenge. Here is David, who went and kills him, goes back to the Jerusalem, and here he found an enemy whose work he has just finished. To make the matter more complicated, Saul's son Jonathan is a very thick friend of David. That is a godly friendship. And they decided to make a covenant with one another, and they said, you know what? Whoever will be alive will take care of each other's family. And they made a covenant. And the civil war raged. It went on. It only ended when Saul and Jonathan both died in a war of Jezreel. And then the news came, the war got over, and that is where this story begins. So let me read it for you, 2 Samuel chapter 9, because we are going to see the story of Mephibosheth, and this Old Testament character actually gives us a picture of God, how He has pursued us, how the God's grace is upon our life. It says, now David said, is there still anyone who is left of the house of Saul that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake? And there was a servant of the house of Saul whose name was Ziba. So when they had called him to David, the king said to him, are you Ziba? He said, at your service. Then the king said, is there not still someone of the house of Saul to whom I may show the kindness of God? And Ziba said to the king, there is still a son of Jonathan who is lame in his feet. So the king said to him, where is he? And Ziba said to the king, indeed, he is in the house of Machir, the son of Amiel in Lo-debar. Then King David sent and brought him out of house of Machir and son of Amiel from Lo-debar. Now when Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, had come to David, he fell on his face and prostrated himself. Then David said, Mephibosheth. And he answered, here is your servant. So David said to him, do not fear, for I will surely show you kindness for Jonathan your father's sake, and will restore to you all the land of Saul your grandfather, and you shall eat bread at my table continually. Then he bowed himself and said, what is your servant that you should look upon such a dead dog as I? And the king called to Ziba, Saul's servant, and said to him, I have given to your master's son all that belonged to Saul and to all his house. You therefore and your sons and your servants shall work for the land for him. And you shall bring in the harvest, that your master's son may have food to eat. But Mephibosheth, your master's son, shall eat bread at my table always. Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Then Ziba said to the king, according to all that my lord the king has commanded his servant, so will your servant do. As for Mephibosheth, said the king, he shall eat at my table like one of the king's sons. Mephibosheth had a young son whose name was Micah, and all who dwelt in the house of Ziba were servants of Mephibosheth. So Mephibosheth dwelt in Jerusalem, for he ate continually at the king's table, and he was lame in both his feet. In fact, little verses before chapter 9, you see that war has finished. And it is almost 20 years since the war of Jezreel, where Saul and Jonathan both had killed, was over. David had to fight many other wars. He won the war. His boundary has been secured. Enemies has been defeated. Kingdom has been firmly established. Officials has been placed. Now, everything is peaceful, everything is calm. And everything is moment it is calm. David remembers the covenant he has made with Jonathan. And I was really surprised when I was reading this verse in chapter, the verse 1, and it says, David asked, is there anyone from the house of Saul? He has made covenant with whom? Jonathan. He was accountable to Jonathan. Least he was accounted to Saul, who was his perennial enemy, unjustly pursuing for his life, wanted to kill him. But David is writing that, is there anyone from the house of Saul whom I can show not David's favor? Whose favor? God's favor. I really like this character. When you read this whole story, the anger starts rising within you. It is completely unjust. Saul, who was nobody, made somebody because of the anointing of God. He leading the God's people, the first king of Israel. He is behaving such unjustly, pursuing the life of an innocent man. In fact, all the warriors, all the people, those who were with David, wanted to kill him. In fact, David had got opportunity to kill him, but he spared his life. He says, I will not lay my hand on a God's anointed. We live in a time when very easily we want to defy the authority. God has appointed God's anointed people over us. We gossip against them. We mock them. I'm not asking for the blind submission, but there has to be godly reverence for God's anointed. And we have to recognize that. Sometimes it looks, your situation can't be worse than David. And that is the God standard. There are time and again, we are in a culture where anybody established authority, whether it's a religious authority, political authority, we tend to mock and defy them. But that's not the God's standard. That's not the God's heart is. I think that's the one reason. David messed up big time, much more than any one of you and I can do. But God said, David is man after God's own heart. David I loved, but his predecessor I hated. And he's talking about Saul. In fact, Saul's sin compared to David was much lesser. It was almost negligible because he wanted to promote himself, that any one of us can do in our human strength. Here is a man who does adultery, who goes on to doing murder, and yet God forgives and tells him he's a man after God's own heart, because there's some standards, some values, some principles were firmly established in David's heart. And David is saying, is there anyone from the house of the Saul whom I can show God's favor? The test comes, two times a test comes to our life. One is a test of adversity, when everything is really gone, things are not moving accordingly, all our doors are shut, all our hopes have been extinguished, our resources are finished. And that is the time we get into the test. And the another test comes, that is called test of prosperity. When everything is going honky-dory, everything is fine, everything is good. And that is the test. Unfortunately, most of us fail in the second test. Adversity, there is no hope, we go back to God. We try to hear what He is saying. It's a problem comes when everything is going well. And most of us, whether it is you and me, or it is the giants of the Bible, they all have fallen when the things were going good for them. Let's come back to the story of Mephibosheth. As we look the restoration of Mephibosheth, the very meaning of the word Mephibosheth means from the mouth of the shameful thing. I don't know how, in a good sense, a godly parents, a royal family, can name their child something like this. And I'm really surprised. I want to know how and why they put the name like this. Isaac and Rebekah were godly parents too. What did they name their child? Jacob. What is the meaning of Jacob? A deceiver, a grabber. And he lived all his life like that. All his life he wanted to grab, he wanted to steal, he wanted to scheming, deceiving. Jabez was the another name comes to my mind. Means pain. And I see in the lines and the verses of Bible, he is agonizing in pain and saying that, Lord, indeed you'll bless me. Will you bless me? I do not want every day people coming in the morning and he say, hey, pain, come here. I don't know, your pain in the neck or... I mean, who is on good sense? They'll say, meet my younger son, he's a grabber. In the Pakka Mumbaiya language, Chinua hai, Jhapti. Kiska bhi saman jhapat leta hai. Who will keep name like this? I remember that when my wife was, she was carrying the second baby, and again, we had gone through this. We didn't know what is going to come, so one name, two name, boy's name. I went into Hebrew, Greek, English, Hindi, everywhere. Baby has come, no name. Finally, you have to give it to the municipality to get the birth certificate. You have to give a name. Finally, I gave up. I opened it to the church. I said, please, pastor has been blessed with a baby girl. Give the name. So many people helped us. And then a lot of name came. The name came is Advika, which is a Sanskrit name, which means gift of God, unique, special. We wanted to give a prophetic name. When my eldest daughter she was born on Deepavali. She was the one who brought reconciliation to my family. She was born right on the Diwali day. So my brother, for the first time after so many months, he spoke to my wife after my marriage. And then he said, you know what? She was born on Diwali. Give her name Deepika, Shri. Shri means Lakshmi. I said, Shri is fine with you. Deepika, we will take it. Deepika means a small lamp. It's a prophetic name we wanted to go. Wherever you'll go, you'll bring light to people. Advika, you'll be special. You'll be gift of God. But here is the name, Mephibosheth. From the mouth of the shameful thing. As we see this story, first of all, we come to know that Mephibosheth was a cripple by a fall. And it is mentioned in 2 Samuel chapter 4, verse 4. It says, now Jonathan, Saul's son, had a son crippled in his feet. He was 5 years old when the report of Saul and Jonathan came from Jezreel, and his nurse took him and fled. And it happened that in her hurry to flee, he fell and became lame, and his name was Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth started with a distinct disadvantage. His well-meaning nurse, when she was going, suddenly she drops the baby. Baby becomes lame for life. And suddenly, in one moment, one news changed the whole scenario. Everything changed. Everything changed for him, for life. Here was a guy who was sure, absolutely in a safe hands, good and great future. Dynamics changed. And you see that, he became lame in his feet, and for the rest of his life, he will be looked after by somebody. Anybody, he was pretty much at the mercy of anyone who came looking for him. And we see that suddenly the promise of power and riches is gone. Saul was the emperor, his grandfather. There was a power. There was riches. Suddenly it was gone. The promise of happiness and honor is gone suddenly. His father was a good father, righteous father, loving father. A promise of a fruitful future is gone suddenly. He was supposed to be the heir apparent. He would have become the king of Israel, probably the third king of the Israel. Future is gone. Lost hope. He lives in a land whose king is going to go after his life. He knew that any day if he'll be found out, he will be killed, because that was the tradition of those days. A victorious king will kill everyone who can be a clement to the throne. Any royal family will not be spared. He lost hope. He lost honor. He almost lives at the mercy of his slaves, his servant. Suddenly, this calamity came and everything changed. And folks, I want to say that the same thing, our lives can also experience a sudden calamity. Many a times we are so engrossed and consumed in our own life. I feel that this 5 feet, 5 inch, 5 feet, 7 feet maximum, 8 feet, if you are really a descendant of Goliath, or 9 feet. Otherwise, somewhere below 7 feet. We are consumed for life, what I'm going to eat, what I'm going to wear, where I will sleep. Life ends in 7 feet. But things change suddenly. One report, I want to tell one of my best friend, very good friend. We got married in same week. Everything was fantastic. My heart goes out for him. Hale and hearty, strong, very good trainer, very effective trainer, and he was getting cough. And he went to the doctor. He was going for a few months, but this cough was not coming. He was not getting healed of this. And one day report came, he has got thyroid cancer. Suddenly, everything changed. I know people who are having some problem, they have gone to the doctor, one report, all plans have come to naught. All your dreams have come to halt. Everything have changed. Because sometimes we are so consumed for ourselves within that we forget that there is a God in heaven who controls and who orchestrates everything. Don't take your life so seriously. Because there is a God in heaven who controls it. The spiritual parallel is also very obvious. Just as Mephibosheth once walked with his father, so we have walked with our Father. We have a design to have a relationship with you. But sin came, and man suffered at fall, which left him as a permanent spiritual cripple, alienated from God. We are born with a nature that takes us away from God, that separates us from God. Ephesians 2:1 says that we were dead in our trespasses and sins. Even if we, morally speaking, we cannot live up to the standard of God. Physically, we have pain, we have suffering, time and again. Spiritually speaking, we cannot do anything to earn the favor and approval of God. There's nothing we can do about it. We are almost lame and crippled, just like this character called Mephibosheth, who couldn't help himself. Same basic problem we too have. But like Mephibosheth, we are crippled, but at the same time, the good news is this, that like Mephibosheth, we were also sought by king. The story doesn't end there. 2 Samuel chapter 9, verses 1 and 3 says, then the king said, is there not still someone of the house of Saul to whom I may show the kindness of God? And Ziba said to the king, there is still a son of Jonathan who is lame in his feet. Mephibosheth never went out to search for this king. He was only 5-year-old when the news came that his father and grandfather both have been killed in a war. There is all probability that he have never heard, because he ran away to a very, very unknown place about David. He never, even if he have known about David, always he felt that this guy, the moment he'll uncover me, or he will discover me, that will be the last day of my life. I'll be killed. So David, either he did not know, or if he knew about him, it was always evoked fear and hopelessness. But King David went out of his way to seek out this lost son. Fortunately for Mephibosheth, it was for good reason that he sought him. In very much same way, Jesus came into the world seeking those who were not seeking him. There are many of us There are many of us have found God when we were not searching for Him. I told you my story. I was looking my answers everywhere, but God in His grace and His mercy decided to reveal Himself to us. He came in searching for us. Grace, that is what's amazing grace we talk about. It is God's grace. Grace is the initiative of God, not ours. We have not initiated grace. It's God who has initiated. God is seeking us. And grace started on the throne of grace. It started on His throne. And He sought us. He came searching for us in our hiding places. And grace of God initiates relationship. He is always longing for relationship. He does not wait that we will come around, we will come to a particular level, then we can have a relationship. In fact, we cannot and do not come to God in ourselves. Sometimes we talk to the young people and ask them, when you sin, where you feel like to go? They say, God. I say, nonsense. When you sin, Lord is the last place. God is the last place you would like to go. Because your sin, your guilt will not allow you to go before God. It is God who comes us every time we fall down. And He picks us up. He says, it's okay. Move. We will take one more step together. It is He who is pursuing us. It is you who is committed to our relationship. If you're honest with your heart, you know what I'm saying. It is He who has come after us. He is seeking after us. God demonstrates, Romans 5:8 says, God demonstrated His love towards us, that while we were still sinners, He died for us. It's not that when we became born again, believer, encountered, certified, delivered people, then He came and died for us. No. When we were still in our muck, we were dirty. Still when we were untouchables, God came and died for us. Grace remembers us when whole world has forgotten. When your own people, your own parents, your own brothers and sisters, your own church members, probably your own office colleague, your own friends, they would have left you, forgotten you. That's the time God came and nudged, hey, wake up. In a different circumstances, in different situations, in different languages, He comes and speaks to you. He says, I have not forgotten you. You know your pain. You know your circumstances. And God knows it well. Grace only wants to give. It does not expect anything in return. That's the grace of God. We must understand that. And God is always calling us. It's, John 15:16, it says, you did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you to bear fruit, and the fruit that will last forever. It is God who is after us. It is God who is choosing us. None of us can sit and tell, oh, you know what, I have decided to follow Jesus. No. It was God purchased that. It was God who brought us to Him. And then with all our huffing and puffing, we are trying to follow Him. As a general rule, people do not seek after God. I was reading the story about this famous French naturalist called Andrew Thoré. And he was dying. He was on his deathbed. His auntie, who was a Christian, she came and said, Andrew, all your life you lived like an atheist. Can you give your life to Jesus? Can you make peace with Him? And Andrew mocked and laughed at his aunt and said that, oh, I never knew that I have fought with God. And that's the story of many of us. We have not understood that we are alienated from God, and there is a need for us to take that step where we can have a reconciliation with God, where we can know. We must know that God is not lost, we are. And that realization has to dawn upon us in order to receive this grace. Like Mephibosheth, who was crippled in his feet, so were we. He was sought by the king. We too have been sought by the king. And the next one, the story says that we have been found in a far country. 2 Samuel 9:4 said, David asked a servant named Ziba where he could find Mephibosheth. And he explained that he was hiding out in a country called Lo-debar. Now, Lo-debar was a very small, obscure kind of a village north of Jerusalem and on the other side of Jordan River. The whole area is a completely wasteland. It was completely barren. Nothing happens. In fact, the literal meaning of place Lo Debar is a place of no bread. A place of no bread. And Mephibosheth knew that he was hiding in this desolate place. He was hiding in this barren place. And he knew that any day if he will be found out, he is going to be killed even in this condition. That was his situation. And that was our situation as well. When we were absolutely hiding in our barrenness, in our hopelessness, in our dark alleys, in complete resourcelessness. And that is the time when we had heard God and heard God clearly. That was the time we felt the hand of God is coming towards us to pick us out. And we are not the only example. We are not the only one who has been there. But Bible is full of such stories. He called us when we were still in Lo Debar. I was thinking in Hindi, it means it's not Lo Dobara. Lo Dobara means take again in Hindi. It is Lo Debar means desolate, barren place. And the story was told about prodigal son, that he was in, this guy till the time had friends, money, resources. He did not care to call his father. He never bothered. Only when his hope is lost, when he has been deserted by his friend, everybody has left, all the things have gone, there is no food to eat. And when, being a Jew, he ended up eating the pig's food, probably the last thing he could have even imagined. And in that, I don't know what is the modern word I want to give, but I'm saying it's a really, really bad situation. When he went there, he came to senses and he said, if only I can go back to my father's house. And he decided to go back. And his father accepted from that situation. His rescue operation began there. The Samaritan women, the story which is unfolding in John chapter 4. This Samaritan women came to fetch water in afternoon under blazing sun. It's not that she had got a hobby to take a long walk in the afternoon. Because she didn't want to face any other women of the village. She wanted to go alone because she must have been overwhelmed by her shame and guilt and the mocking and the gossiping. She might have been the center of everything. And she said, if only I can avoid everyone. Absolutely ostracized, condemned, untouchable, undesirable women. When she went that day, she did not know that today is going to be the first day of her rest of her life. Today something is going to happen, and there she meets at the well the giver of life. And one touch, one meeting, one conversation, and her life is never same again. One life, one touch, and her life is never same again. The women who was so ashamed of herself, when Jesus touched her, she ran back to the village and forget about the women. She looked at the men's eyes and he said, you know what? I have met somebody at the well who know everything I ever did. Jesus said only one thing. But see the conviction, when it comes big. She said, I ever did, he knows it. She became the first evangelist of the village. God comes and touches us in that way. Jacob, when he was running, when nobody was chasing, and when he was running from Esau, and as he was running, he came to the place called Bethel. And as he put a stone as a pillow, God spoke to him. God had given him a promise that you will be reigning. You will be ruling over the older one. But they decided to make it happen. Sometimes we want to help God. When we want to help God, there is a problem. Abraham had the promise. that your descendants will be as much as the sand on a seashore and like a star in the skies. But they decided to help God. Sarah, send Hagar so that he can do something. Finally, the problem of Middle East was born. That's exactly happens when we decide to do something much more than that. Lost sheep, we know that when how Jesus is telling this parable, and he's saying that when God, he leaves 99 who is going in a straight path, who the disciplined one, obedient one. His heart is for the one who has gone wayward, who has gone astray. And he goes and he searches and he does it. When he finds him, he doesn't whack him. Idiot, you have done it again. Or probably the sheep also says, oops, I did it again. But you know what? It says that he picks him up, the shepherd picks him up, puts him around his neck, and he goes rejoicing, singing, celebrating. That's the heart of God. He has picked us up, not when the things were going for us. He has picked us up. He has reached to us when we were absolutely in dump. We were absolutely in pit situation. And that is where God has come to us. What a beautiful picture that a place of no bread, in our Lo Debar means a place of no bread, comes Jesus, whose very name is bread of life. He comes to nourish us. He comes to bless us. He comes to our desolate place so that we can have a nourishment and life. And that is how God looks for any lost sinner. That is how David looked for Mephibosheth. And further, when we go down the story, we find that, like Mephibosheth, we were also saved for somebody else's sake. Mephibosheth was saved for another's sake. David said to him, do not fear, in verse 7, I will surely show you kindness for Jonathan, your father's sake. And I will restore to you all your land of Saul, your grandfather. David loved Mephibosheth from the very beginning, not because Mephibosheth was something good or he has done something good to earn his love. But David, because of his covenant with Jonathan, he decided to love him anyway, no matter. It was not dependent on how Mephibosheth was or who he was and in what condition he was. What a beautiful picture and a vivid picture. God has loved us. God has cared for us. God has came to seek and save us because of Jesus Christ. For his son's sake, we have been saved, and we don't have to earn his love. We already have his love. God's love was given freely, and it was given in Jesus' name. I really like this. One of my favorite verses, Ephesians 1:6, he says that Apostle Paul actually saying is that we have been accepted in the beloved. We have been accepted in beloved. It's all about Jesus who came and who had helped us to accept. This can be our story as well. And finally, when we go further, we see that like Mephibosheth, we also can have some day when we will be restored to the king's table. Mephibosheth was restored to the king's table. What it says in verse 10 to 13, it says, as for Mephibosheth, said the king, he shall eat at my table like one of the king's son. That is the beauty of God. What was the heart's cry of Mephibosheth? If only I will get this judgment or decree from David, okay, you have been forgiven, no more death penalty for you. You can live. All he wanted this so that he can, live a life free of fear. But David picks him up, not only forgives his life, but he brings him to restoration. And he says, as for Mephibosheth, he will eat from the king's table like one of the king's son. And that is the beauty of God when he has lifted us. The story of Joseph at the bottom of a dry well, his brothers probably have left him there thinking he will die. God only not picks him up through his journey, but establish him as a prime minister of a heathen nation. So much so that he became the source of salvation for the nation of Israel. Simon Peter is another beautiful story of God's restoration. Nobody can challenge the zeal of Peter. He was consumed in the zeal for the Lord. But in moment of human weakness, he denied Jesus 3 times in the temple when the court case was going on. He says, do you know this person? No, I don't know. Do you know him? No, I don't know. Third time, of course you know him. Ma kasam, I don't know. Probably something like he would have said that. And when Jesus was dead, Bible says that he went with head hanging in shame. He didn't want to face anybody. Least of them were any of their disciples. Overwhelmed with the shame and guilt and condemnation, he said, I cannot show my face to anybody. And he went fishing. Khel khatam, paisa hazam, Jesus died, all over. Let's go back to the old profession. But Jesus, in his graciousness, in his love and compassion, comes individually. And he came and said, Peter, why did you do that? Did he say that? No, he didn't say that. But lots of love and compassion. He says, Peter, do you love me? And he said, yes, Lord. Take care of my sheep. Jesus again asks, Peter, do you really love me? Lord, please. I love you. And then again Jesus asked, Peter, you love me? And at that time, you know, Lord, I love you. And Jesus restores him back. Not only sets him free, had meals with him. Not only sets him free from the guilt and shame, which can be life-taking experience, but also, he says, the promise for you has not gone waste. That this is the rock on which I will build my church, and gates of hell shall not prevail against it. You know what, people? Our call is bigger than our fall. Somebody would have said amen to it. Our call is bigger than our fall. Who has not fallen? But God has restored Noah. He has restored Abraham when he lied. God restored Jacob when he messed up everything. All these people, God lifted up David. And he says, the call on your life is bigger than your fall. If only we'll respond properly to God. And the same day, Peter, when he has gone away in remorse, thinking all over, I have messed up big time. There is no way my life can be repaired. No way my life can be restored. He fills with the Holy Spirit. And in the very place he denied out of fear, he fills with courage and confidence and boldness. And he says, you know what? Jesus has come to give life, the same Jesus you have crucified. And he preached with a confidence, and the first conversion takes place. 3,000 people. 3,000 people comes to know the saving grace of Jesus Christ that day when Peter preached. Jesus did not end at dealing with his shame and everything. He lifts them up. Isn't it? All of you I can see, Charles or anybody. You didn't come in a very, Pastor, I'm worthy. You please take it. I'm the best candidate, like that Bihari responsible person. Oh, you don't know. I told in the first service. Biharis are very responsible people. One Bihari went for the job interview. And when he was going for the interview, I didn't tell them, so I'm telling them. Today the Bihari's salvation will come. So, he went to the interview. The guy who was taking interview, he said, for this particular job, this particular position, we want somebody very responsible person. He said, I am very responsible. You take me. He said, how can you say you're very responsible? He said, you know what? All the companies I worked previously, anything will go wrong, they will say, you are responsible. Peter, Elijah's story, how much? Moses. Moses goes and he says, educated in the University of Egypt, mighty in word and in deed, that's what the Bible says. And he says, I'm ready to lead you people. Those who are under slavery of Egypt. Started running for his life in the next scene. For 40 years, he studied in the University of Desert, tending sheep. And he came to a position, he came to a place when he thought, oh, this is all I'm going to do. This is the calling of my life, following behind the sheep. And that time, God's words comes to him, Moses, Moses. ऐसा आवाज तो पहले सुना नहीं कभी. He says, Moses, Moses. And he says, you know what? I want you to go and lead the people of Israel under the yoke of Egyptian. He says, oh, please send somebody else. Victor is highly qualified for this. He did that. He did that. There was lots of argument to and fro was going on with God. And he said, you send somebody else. After such a long discourse, lot of counseling session. And after that, after finishing all the counseling session, he said, okay, fine, send Charles. Or send somebody else. That's what he said. Send somebody else. You know what? He said, I cannot even speak. And God says, now you are in a right position, you can be used. God restores him, and you and I know what he did. Let Pharaoh, let my people go. Pharaoh had it, this young man. Grace restores us to our place. And when God restores, he restores two things in our life. First, he restores our position or our possession. David brought back Mephibosheth to the palace. Actually, palace belongs to him. He was the heir apparent. And not only David said, I will give you everything or every land which belonged to Saul and his family is yours. He gave everything to him. I was wondering how much must have been left for David. Because whole thing, if the king, Saul was the king, everything must have been, a major chunk of the kingdom was belonged to him. And he gave it to him. He gave all his possession, all that belonged to Saul, all that belonged to Saul. He said, give it to him. And God also restores our position. David brought Mephibosheth to his table. He said, as for Mephibosheth, said the king, he shall eat at my table like one of the king's son. He would have given him all the land. But still, this lame person could have lived like a lame, crippled. But he said, no, Mephibosheth will be elevated and he will sit at the king's table like one of the king's son. God restores not only our possession, but also our position. Hallelujah. This is amazing. Amazing. I was sharing my testimony. When I left home, like any other nice, committed, devoted Hindu family, they said nothing, no portion, no inheritance will be given to you. And this was my worst fear. I wanted to have Christ, but I wanted to have my portions also. But God has a different sense of humor. He said, you can choose only one. Either you can choose your possession, or you can choose me. And the people, those who have chosen possession, they have been debarred from both. But if you choose Lord, both will be restored to you. When I asked, I was the eldest son, and I lived like an eldest son, ruling and exercising my authority. I have beaten my brother many times. So he never back answered to me. till the time he knew that I become a Christian. And that day when I said that, okay, I want to buy a house in Vizag, I was almost obsessed with that place. He said, can you give me my inheritance, my money? My father was working for Indian Oil. He had died and his provident fund was not shared and everything. I said, can you please give some money and then I want to buy a house. To my surprise, they said no. This is the first time I heard no from him. And I really didn't like it. But I reconciled to the fact that they will not give, so I went away. And finally, I moved to Bombay. I accepted Christ because they didn't want to give money so that I can get married a girl of my own community. But I decided, in God's grace, I decided to obey him, got married to a godly woman. Everything happened. After a few years, this guy comes up, my brother comes up, and he says, you know what? Your money, we have not touched it, you take it. I said, no, I don't want. Because God has really blessed us. I'm saying we were so blessed. We had a house of our own. We had a good job. By the time I had come full-time to work in the church. And I literally am saying, I don't want, because the more money, more problem. And this guy is saying, no, it is yours, you take it. Tumhara paisa main kyun loon? It is your money, you take it. And almost he forced me. When I ask, you'll be given none. But God, when he restores everything. Sometimes you feel that, I have sacrificed so much for God. You can never, ever outgive God. Same thing I was sharing about my testimony going to the full-time. I had jumped. When I jumped, I almost took my salary dip of 1/6. And when I went and talked to my wife, I have been asked to come as a full-time. What do you say? She said, you know what? I said, one of the problems is that our finances will be absolutely come 1/6. What do you say? And she said, Daddy, okay, this is the way she tells me. Our needs are very less, and I'm working. We will manage. God will provide. Let me tell you, people, we never lacked anything. We were the least paid in the church. Our house was never devoid of people. We never felt that our fridge is empty. We never felt our kitchen has run dry. We never have to say, Lord, feed us, give us something. There was always enough for us and something to spare for the people, those who walk in. That is prosperity. Why should I tell my people that you have a sofa where nobody can sit? You have a car where nobody goes in. That will be the shame of God's prosperity. And I want to say that after 9 years, my pastor, he started talking about the 7-mountain mandate. And he said, why don't you, some of you who are in the church, go out and also looking into the different sphere of society where church has to go and influence the mountain of media, or the family, government, politics, journalism. And I became the first casualty. I took a sabbatical for 1 year. He said, I said, I want to take sabbatical. He said, why? I said, I want to watch movies. I'll travel. I have not been doing it for such a long period. He said, you'll get bored in 1 month. Stanley, he must have preached here. And then he said, why don't you go into education? You do B.Ed. At the age of, okay, forget the age. But it was quite advanced. I said, how can you even suggest like that, Stanley? Go and do B.Ed. First of all, I'm advanced in my age. People will laugh at me. Secondly, I have no acumen for studies. I have not studied for a long time. How can I compete with these young people? And you know my English. He said, no, you just give a try. I didn't understand the whole picture, but I just obeyed. When I went, and in fact, before I went, I knew this profession has been hijacked by the women. Or rather, I say it has not been hijacked, we have given on a platter. You take it. I used to, as a part of my pastoral ministry, we used to go to different schools for value education. We were very popular. When they will see us, they'll hoot the normal teachers. And when we'll go to the school, we remember our days. When we were going to school, there were 85-90% were the male teachers. Isn't it? Good old days. How many I can see who can identify with me? But nowadays you go, only 2 sir, watchman sir and PT sir are male. Rest all are women. All are women, because we have willingly given this whole area of education to the one part. So I went there and I did not know, but I obeyed my leader. I went there and when I went to the class, finally I cleared the CET and took admission. I went into the class, it was a class of 69. Only 2 were men. Another one was half of my age. I must tell you one motivation that kept me alive, that I never got such attention from women. We were the stars, only 2. We really enjoyed. Every time somebody will ask, why did you join B.Ed? I don't know. My leader have said I have come. I finished B.Ed. After that I went and I said, what next? You want me to come to the church? He said, no. After a lot of difficulty, coming from Navy, I got a little bit hang of the church. And when I started getting familiar with the church, he said, go out. That's not a very comfortable thing. But again, I obeyed him. And I started looking for a job, and then he said, you do M.Ed. Also, by the time I finished my MSc Psychology, one application from this, if you'll not study when your parents are saying, you'll be studying in your 40s. For the young people, you study when your parents are saying. So I finished my studies, everything. I started applying for job. I didn't get a job. I thought I am quite qualified. I thought I'm quite eligible because we were popular in school. We were going to different schools, some reputed schools we were going. And the job which I got was a job of 5,000 rupees in an international school for primary section. We were more used to talking and interacting with the young people, 10th standard, 12th standard, all the elderly crowd. And I went to Stanley, I said, this is the job I have got it. He said, you take it. Again, I said, enough I have obedience. How much more obedience can be tested? He said, no, you take it. I said, Stanley, I cannot come out of this primary class without killing one of them. Because I have no grace. I have not graduated through Sunday school. I have been directly parachuted in the adult church. So finally, Stanley said, no, you take it. And cutting a long story short, I obeyed my leaders because with my understanding, with the natural eyes, those are foolish steps. But as I obeyed them, and I thought, okay, this is my fate, this is what I am going to be, because I worked, and the frustration also started setting in me, because I thought, I have worked 9 years in the church, I'm unemployable outside, I have lost my skill, I have lost my engineering skills, I have lost my all edge and sharpness to go outside, and there opens a door out of unexpected quarter. This company called Treehouse Education and Accessories Limited, which was till last year, it was 2,500 crore company, one of the biggest educational corporate company, public sector company. Private sector company. It was listed in NSE, BSE, and the MD calls me up and he says, you know what, can you join us? And I said, no, I'm doing my M.Ed. He says, why you want to do M.Ed? Principal banna hai? I'll make you principal. And I refused initially. I really was reluctant not to go, and he calls me, he pursues after me, and he says, made me sit in front of him and say that, I'll make you principal of a big school I have opened in Rajasthan. And the salary which he said, it was so big that I immediately said, no, itna bada salary mat do. When you go for an interview, what do you say? I think we can negotiate salary. My natural response was that, hey, don't pay me so much. He said, no, I want to pay you. I don't want you to work for free. What I'm saying is that God restores us. In these days when I was going through the transition, I was angry. Have I taken a good decision when I obeyed my leaders? Have I taken a good decision coming full-time and serving the Lord? Because all the naval friends has gone far ahead in their career. But God says, those who look at Jesus, their faces are never covered with shame. He openly challenges us, taste and see that can you ever outgive me? Not that 30-fold, 60-fold, and 100-fold I'm going to give back to you. And he lifted me up from there and gave me such exposure in last 3.5 years, which is humanly and in natural realm not possible. I just want to say that there is blessing in obedience to our leaders because they can see much ahead of us. And I have been blessed by that. Secondly, when God restores us, He restores our position and He restores our possession. And this is not only limited in the physical realm, only in the realm of your job, your career, your finances, but also in the spiritual term. We were doing a study on Revelation. It's a beautiful picture being painted that how God so diligently preparing a banquet for us. Jesus said, I will never eat this table again. I will never share this table again unless I'll see you in heaven. Who said? The King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, who is so glorious, so mighty God. He's saying, I'm waiting for you, I'm preparing. The Lamb and the bride is going to meet together. And He is preparing a big banquet table with lots of chairs. Your name, individual name is written on it. I said, must tell your neighbor that in heaven also you sit alongside me. Husband and a wife, please tell. They didn't get it. Oh, okay, it's a young crowd. Okay, you have a time. Your time will come. God has really been kind, and He has been preparing for our restoration. In conclusion, I want to say that even as we think about the story of Mephibosheth, it was something like this. We were designed and created, I'm not saying manufactured, but designed and created by God to have a fellowship with Him, to walk with Him. But devil came, picked us up, and ran to a far-off country. And in the process, he dropped us. We became crippled in our sin. We fell in our sin, became the permanent alienation from God. But God, being God, sent His Son, Jesus Christ, to restore us, to reconcile us to Himself. He has gone out of His way to seek us out. He has found us in far country. And today God is saying in conclusion that He wants to carry us. Mephibosheth was helpless, lame. He couldn't help himself. So David sent his servant to carry him. Isaiah 46, very nicely it says in 46:4, even to your old age, I am He. And even to gray hairs, I will carry you. I have made and I will bear. I will carry and will deliver you. It is very nicely. I was telling them, when you have been really in love with one another, if you're a boyfriend and a girlfriend or anybody, the best statement you can make is, I will marry you. Only God says, I will carry you. And I was struck by this further with details. He's saying, even to the gray hair. This is a challenge for even those who are married people. Whether will you carry me when my hairs will be graying? The wrinkles will come. Will you still carry me? That God is saying that I will carry you. I will take care of you. Matthew 11:28 says, come to me. Come to me. All you who labor and are heavy laden, I will give you rest. The only condition God is putting to you, come. Come. This invitation is for all of us. Come. Say, come. Come. God is saying, come. I will give you rest. What is the condition? Come. Some of us rooted, firmly established, I shall not be moved, I shall not be shaken. Then only when I'll die, somebody will be taken. Somehow I'll be taken, something like that. It will, we don't move. But God is saying, come, and I am going to give you rest. He wants to carry us. Secondly, grace needs to be accepted. Grace is very expensive, but somebody has paid the price. David said to him, do not fear, for I will surely show you kindness, for Jonathan your father's sake, and I will restore to you all the land Saul your grandfather. Accepting grace means to respond. David called and sent a messenger. But Mephibosheth must accept this invitation. I was thinking, if only this Mephibosheth would have been whole, probably would have run away. Oh, David's people are coming. He would have opened the back door and would have run away. And he would have lost the beautiful planning of restoration. But only because he was crippled, he couldn't help himself, he allowed himself to be carried to the king. And that is why we say that all our problems are not bad. Most of us have accepted the God's grace and responded to his invitation when we were in trouble. Some preacher was saying that if we sum up the life of Joseph, it can be said, his good time were the good time, his worst time were the best time. That is the time he had encounter with God. That is the time he responded to God. You know, Mephibosheth, actually, when David spoke to him, he said, why you are concerned about me? A person as good as a dead dog. He came to a position when he needed, when he wanted God's grace upon himself. And today, the challenge for you and me is, are we willing to respond?
Thank you for listening to this message. To know more about us, please visit www.adonai-ministries.com.